Pro-choice is recognizing that women have the right to decide what happens with their own bodies. Some background information. People identifying themselves as pro-choice contend that choosing abortion is a right that should not be limited by governmental or religious authority, and which outweighs any right claimed for an embryo or fetus. They say that pregnant women will resort to unsafe, illegal abortions if there is no legal option. Abortion is defined as the termination of a human pregnancy. There are two main types of procedures. The first includes the abortion pill, which are medications that end pregnancy. The first medication is mifepristone, which blocks progesterone, and the second is misoprostol, which empties out the uterus. The second type of abortion are clinical abortions. The first type of clinical abortion includes suction, which is used to remove pregnancy from a uterus. This one is most common. And secondly, dilation and evacuation, which uses suction and medical tools to empty the uterus. Abortion procedures have been developed since 1550 BC, first used by ancient Egyptians. The procedure was also seen in ancient Greece and Rome, until Rome ruled it a crime, denying men the chance to be fathers. In early 1800s, abortions were legal in both Britain and America in early pregnancies. In 1821, Connecticut became the first state to make them a crime. In 1845, in New York, women who had abortions were criminalized. By mid-1800s, pro-life advocate Dr. Storer led a campaign to ban abortions nationwide. By the 1900s, abortion was banned in most 50 states. By 1965, abortions were outlawed in all 50 states. Roe v. Wade. On January 2, 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled a 7-2 decision on Roe v. Wade, declaring the procedure, abortions, a fundamental right. This ruling banned interference from legislators during the first trimester of pregnancy and allowing the states to regulate during the second and third trimesters. This decision made abortions by non-state licensed physicians illegal. As of January 23, 2017, President Trump has reinstated former President Ronald Reagan's bill restricting all non-governmental organizations funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development from performing or promoting abortion services. On March 30, 2017, Vice President Mike Pence broke a tie between the Senate, passing an anti-Planned Parenthood bill. This bill allows states to defund Planned Parenthood. Safe spaces. Places like Planned Parenthood provide safe places for women to have abortion. The risk rate for unsafe abortions is 1 in 270. Unsafe abortion is responsible for 1 in 8 maternal deaths. Abortions were not taught in medical schools, so people performing them were not properly trained. Before safe abortions were legalized, women after having the procedure experienced heavy bleeding, fevers, incomplete procedures, and perforations from the procedure. Some women grew ill or died due to having botched abortions. A quote from Dr. David Grimes describes what abortions were like before Roe v. Wade. The decades before Roe v. Wade were the battle days. It was horrible carnage, and every one of those deaths were preventable. These women were dying of simple things like hemorrhage and infection, and any third-year medical student with adequate equipment could have easily handled it. But the reason those women were dying is because the country had not yet made the decision that these women's lives are worth saving. It's just one of the ugly manifestations of misogyny, and it needs to be understood as such. It was a profound disdain of women and their autonomy. Rape and incest. How can you deny an abortion to a 12-year-old girl who is the victim of incest? Complains an indigent supporter of abortion. And how can you call yourself a loving Christian if you would force a victim of violent rape to give birth to a rapist child? Many women do not want to bear the trauma of carrying a pregnancy full term after being sexually assaulted. Yes, there are options of adoption after delivery, and no one is saying that abortion is the only option for women who have been attacked. But a woman should have the right to choose if she wants to live through the daily reminders of her attacks for 40 weeks after. Fatal birth defects in stillborns. 22 weeks into Taylor Mahaffey's pregnancy, her baby started emerging from her womb. With doctors powerless to stop it, and because of Texas's fetal pain law, all the hospital could do was send her home. The Mahaffeys believed the only humane thing to do once their son was pronounced dead was to speed up labor and deliver the infant early. Due to Texas law, HB 2, inducing labor is seen as a form of abortion if the mother is considered healthy, so they were sent home. Later, Mrs. Mahaffey began to bleed, and they went back to the hospital, but they refused to extract the fetus. After 4 days, her water burst, and the stillborn infant was delivered.
A big counter-argument towards abortion is that if a woman does not want the child, adoption is an easy alternative. We cannot default to adoption until we fix the adoption process. To start, those who do not get adopted go into the overpopulated foster care system. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, in 2015, 427,910 children were reported in the foster care system. In 2015 alone, 47,219 children under the age of 1 entered the system, and only 10,967 children under the age of 1 exited the system. There are simply not enough homes for all of these unwanted babies. To give you an idea of the cost of adopting out of the foster care system versus adoption from the birth mother, the average cost of a foster care adoption is $2,744. The average cost of adopting through an adoption agency is $39,966, and the average cost of adopting independently is $34,093. So no wonder so many kids end up in foster care. In addition, not all adoptive parents will pay for a birth mother's prenatal care or delivery. Prenatal care averages at $2,000. An uncomplicated vaginal birth averages at $9,600, and an uncomplicated C-section birth averages $15,800. For those women who are getting an abortion because they cannot afford a child, they cannot even afford to give birth in a hospital. Another argument against abortion is that use protection or do not have sex and you will not get pregnant. No contraceptive is 100% guarantee. Of the women who had abortions, 13% were consistent birth control users and 14% were consistent condom users. 1% of women who had abortions were forced to have sex. Also, only 8% were non-contraceptive users, and the majority of these women were young, poor, Black, Hispanic, and/or less educated. You cannot use contraceptives if you do not have access to them, nor have no knowledge of sexual education. Also, you cannot tell married, engaged, dating, or any couple not to have sex for the sole reason of pregnancy. Sex is not solely a means of reproduction for humans. A third argument against abortion is that people claim to not want their tax money going towards abortion. The Hyde Amendment passed in 1973 prohibits the use of federally funded abortions unless in the cases of rape, incest, or the mother's life is in danger. American tax money has not funded the termination of an unwanted pregnancy for at least 44 years. The bigger picture is that the fetus is just another part of a pregnant woman's body, like her tonsils or appendix. It is hard to believe that a frozen embryo is an actual person. No one should be expected to donate her body as a life support system for somebody else.
Counter-argument. Murder. Some people describe abortion as murder. Murder is the unlawful killing of one human being from another. Thus, murder is illegal and abortion is not. Abortion is not against the law, so it cannot be classified as unlawful. Another common misconception is that life actually starts at conception. When life starts is extremely controversial. During week 2, the fertilization process begins. The fertilized eggs will start dividing into multiple cells and enter the uterus. During week 3, the implantation process begins. Microscopic ball of hundreds of rapidly multiplying cells send the hormone HCG, which tells ovaries to stop releasing eggs. During week 4, the ball of cells is officially an embryo. You might be able to positively test on an at-home pregnancy test. The embryo is about the size of a poppy seed. During week 5, the embryo is about the size of a tadpole. The circulatory system begins to form. tiny heart will start to beat, and during week 6, the nose, mouth, and ears are starting to shape, intestines and brain beginning to develop, and the embryo is about the size of a lentil. During week 7, the embryo is doubled in size. It still has a tail, the hands and feet look like paddles, and the embryo is about the size of a blueberry. During week 8, the embryo starts to move around. Nerve cells are branching out, the lungs are developing, and the embryo is about the size of a kidney bean. During week 9, the tail disappears. The embryo weighs about a fraction of an ounce and is the size of a grape. By week 10, the embryo has completed the most crucial portion of development. Skin still translucent, tiny limbs can bend, and nails are starting to form. During week 11, the embryo is about the size of a fig. They start kicking, stretching, and hiccuping. During week 12, the embryo is the size of a lime. The reflexes are kicking in, toes and fingers start to move. During week 13, the embryo is the size of a pea pod. It is the last week of the first trimester. The fingers have fingerprints, and veins and organs are clearly visible. Week 14, the embryo is the size of a lemon. The brain is sending impulses. It is using its facial muscles, and kidneys have developed. You can find out you're pregnant as early as 2 weeks given today's technology. 65% of abortions occur within the first 8 weeks. 25.6% of abortions occur after 9 to 13 weeks. A majority occur before 14 weeks. Some people make the claim that abortion promotes a culture in which human life is disposable. However, this is a very weak argument because abortion takes a big toll on mothers psychologically, and even though in most cases it is the right thing to do, some women still feel guilt for it. Some people claim that abortion is against the word of God or against their religion. However, this doesn't reflect the founding fathers' views of separation of church and state, not to mention that some people do not practice an organized religion. Some people claim that the fetus feels pain during the abortion procedure. However, the cortex itself is what allows people to feel pain, and the cortex does not even become functional until at least the 26th week. Some people have made the claim that abortion goes against the ideas of the founding fathers and takes away from the inalienable rights. However, in order to take away from a person's inalienable rights, the person would have to be alive